Anyway, I want to just add a couple things here that you're probably not aware of. Not too long ago, Bob's over this, I'm sure, as I called him on it. The legislature, and it actually came out of Tom Tiffany's in Rhinelander down there, they wanted to take the police powers away from the counties. And that was a fact. They were going to try to take our powers away. They thought we were too powerful, which we do have a lot of power. But just to let you know, that's how that went. And furthermore, you got to understand this too, that if you don't stay on top of stuff, things will happen. And what I did, when I found out about this, I called up the Counties Association, who represents all the counties in the state of Wisconsin. And I started talking with them, and I said, what the heck's going on here? You've got a lobbyist down there? And by the way, I got a recording out of the legislature down there of this lobbyist who said that he would support taking the powers away from the counties, the police powers. And the goddamn guy works for the Counties Association. He's their lobbyist. I got his name home and I can't think of it offhand. But anyway, we sort of nipped it in the bud, but there's no stopping it. They'll do anything to corrupt the people that are fighting against this mine. You know, I haven't been threatened personally in a long time, but I don't know the rest of these guys. But there's people out there that don't like us. They don't like what we're doing. But you know what? There's only one way to keep going. You look ahead, you don't look behind you. And you keep fighting for what you believe in.
Many people have asked the question, what's going on? It seems like it's a real slow time. Let me give you an update. I had a meeting with the DNR yesterday to get an update on things. The company has finished 22 borings. They have now asked permits for 6 more. In other words, they're getting these core samples to try to figure out what's in the body itself. None of that information, by the way, will be public until the application, until they apply for an environmental impact report. Second thing that they are doing, along with groups like the Wetlands Association and Bad River Watershed Association, Bad River Tribe and others, going out and mapping and understanding the rivers, the streams, and the wetlands in the system. The company is also doing that. They are doing a wetland identification project. They say it'll be done this year. More than likely it will not be done until sometime next year. We will never know what their understanding is of the wetlands until they submit their application. So we won't have their concept, their image of what the wetlands and qualities are and be able to compare until they apply. Because their whole notion is keep as much of this information secret as long as possible and then tell people that they'll fix whatever problems are there. But one thing that will become public in the near future is the map of the navigable waterways. They are finishing the navigable waterways, and they are going to be required to give that to the Department of Natural Resources for their comments sometime this fall. We don't know whether it's early, mid, late fall, early winter. The point is, once that information gets to the DNR, it becomes public information. And once that information becomes public, Janet and I are going to call upon the Department of Natural Resources, even though they do not have a requirement to hold a public hearing, that they hold a public hearing so that the public can be in a room, not one person at one time, but in a room and everybody can understand what's on that map. We then have the first declaratory discussion about the resource. And there are navigable waterways in the mine area that are going to be disturbed, that they're going to be able to fill. Wisconsin has had a public trust doctrine since 1848 in our Constitution. And their filling those waterways will result in a lawsuit and in a public awareness that indeed they weakened environmental policy, as they did with wetlands, in suggesting that it isn't absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary to fill wetlands when that's contrary to our policy. So sometime this year, we are going to be able to push them hard on a public discussion on those navigable waters. And I think that then we then begin to have to focus more on the science and the resource and not the jobs issue.
I want to just interject a little more radical viewpoint at this point and just say that all of that stuff that we're talking about is a joke. The notion of studying those navigable waterways and mapping out all those unnamed waterfalls, all of those streams, all those groundwater and surface water interactions, because groundwater becomes surface water and surface water goes back to become groundwater in those hills, is an absolute joke. And it's a joke because if you go back in time, the whole notion of the state initiative was to create certainty for the mining company. A week ago, Tom Tiffany's on the radio saying he's pretty certain mine's going to go through. It is. If we acquiesce ourselves and allow ourselves to be dragged into this discussion that borders insanity, the notion that by mapping navigable waterways, we're going to be able to explode the area in an environmentally friendly and responsible way and not having an impact on the downstream territories is an absolute joke. And don't forget that. Don't forget that we're being acquiesced and we're being pushed. And don't give up that ground in your thoughts. And I'm going to tell you a couple of talking points I want to just raise right now. Bill Williams and all of the Republican legislators, when I talked to them during the mining fight, the solution to pollution is dilution. If I had $1 for every time I heard that, right, I could probably start some renewable energy project here in the region. These men came in brazen, with guns blazing, thinking that they were going to steamroll the Northland up here. The solution to pollution is dilution. You know what that says and why they don't talk about that no more? Because that particular project is about that close to Lake Superior as far as these catastrophes and these types of catastrophic projects go to pristine waterways and ultimately to Big Blue out there. And that's the thing, you know, we haven't talked about Lake Superior at all tonight. In our discussion or in any of the questions, we haven't talked about Lake Superior. And so the solution of pollution to dilution is a drop talking point because number one, that's a tell on an engineering perspective that Bill Wiggins and GTAC have. Number two, the solution to pollution is dilution tells a tale about how quickly they expect their toxicity to get into Lake Superior. So quickly that you ain't gonna have to worry about it. It's out there, right? The creation of a mining district. Scott Walker came in, guns blazing, talking about a Northwoods mining district. Where's that talk gone? It's been dropped because the people in northern Wisconsin are going, wait a minute, what? And so Urbana, on the east side of the Bad River watershed, Gogebic taconite in the headwaters of the Bad River, Aquila resources in the eastern watershed, Gogebic taconite in the headwaters of the Bad River, Urbana on the shoreline over in Little East Iron County in Michigan, the White Pine Mine. You get a picture that tells a tale. Scott Walker was not just talking about Wisconsin, although he had dreams of a mining district in Wisconsin. Scott Walker was listening to billionaires talk, extractive industry, corporate giants talk about what they were going to do to this region, to this South Shore, this mid kind of South Shore area of the Western Great Lakes Basin. And it's a drop talking point right now because people like everybody in this room are saying, to hell with that. And the last talking point that's actually being registered as a lie by PolitiFact right now is the notion that this is part of what would eventually be a 22-mile-long project. Reclaiming as we go, they used to say. Nobody talks about that no more. In fact, that's a taboo subject. And it's the same exact premise. Whispering on their tours, right, is Tim Myers, the engineer, whispering to folks on their tours who he thinks are pro-mining, there's black iron ore that we can get at west of here too, in Ashland County. You know, what these guys want to do to this area is unbelievable. And I just want to say a couple things about that. Don't give up that ground in your mind. And I respect this gentleman right here because he understands how these processes work and he sees portals of possibilities in terms of attacking, what's going on. But at the end of the day, what's wrong with staking out ground that says this place is unminable? This place is unminable because it is so beautiful and so critical to the downstream ecosystems that it's a resiliency factor keeping Lake Superior alive in the face of climate change and other contextual things that mean to kill us, right? We're so water rich. We're so water rich, we're not familiar with reserve water rights agreements. All the tribes, we could travel into the future by jumping a plane and dropping down on the west coast. All the tribes out there have federally negotiated water rights agreements with other municipalities, with the states, with the feds, because there ain't enough water for everybody. There ain't enough water for farms. That stuff is not here yet because we're water rich, but wait until they want Lake Superior. And put that into context of what Bill Wiggins and everybody else wants to do to this whole area right here. It's just unbelievable, and those are missing discussions when we talk about what our politicians are currently jabbering about. In Mary Berkey's discussions about the mine, I have not heard protection and preservation of Lake Superior as a counter. For God's sakes, isn't Wisconsin bordered up by Lake Superior? Bad River is. We recognize the importance of it. It's almost like Lake Superior has become a hushed subject. And it's time to bring that big body of water right outside our door here up into a high place in the way we discuss things and the way we look at the world around us. And so then it isn't just a matter of Mary Berkey defending herself against the notion of jobs and money. It becomes her staking out some high ground with the big lake behind her and having something to say that really means something for the area and for the state of Wisconsin. And, all I can say is that there's a lot of work that could be done between our local region right here today and our local region somewhere in the future being dang near self-reliant in terms of a local living economy. And this ain't, I learned this today, as a matter of fact. I joined the Alliance for Sustainability today. So, but in between today and that day that this region is self-reliant, and God help us, is still got artesian water wells along the lakeshore, right? Free, pumping 24/7 in the midst of the polar vortex. In that space right there are possibilities. And there's possibilities of money, there's possibilities of jobs, there's possibilities of new economies and renewable energy and all of that stuff. And where is that in our dialogue as we're talking like politicians? Let's not give up that ground and acquiesce ourselves into thinking that the mining company is going to teach us about our homeland, is going to teach us how to safely explode areas. This is crazy stuff. I just had to get radical for a second. I apologize.